Hello and welcome to What the F*** Just Happened Today, your essential guide to the daily shock and awe in national politics. I'm Joe Amditis. Let's get to it. It's Thursday, March 17th, 2022. Welcome to day 422. The House of Representatives passed legislation to revoke Russia's most favored nation status when it comes to trade, which would allow the U.S. to impose higher tariffs on Russian goods if the bill becomes law. The legislation would suspend normal trade relations with Russia and Belarus, as well as require the U.S. Trade Representative to urge Russia to be suspended from the World Trade Organization and to stop Belarus's membership application process. The bill now heads to the Senate, where the chamber already has a matching bill with bipartisan support. Meanwhile, Biden's national security advisor warned Moscow that there would be unspecified, quote, consequences and implications of any possible Russian decision to use chemical or biological weapons in Ukraine, end quote. According to a new global threats report, the Pentagon's Defense Intelligence Agency assessed that, quote, Russia likely will increasingly rely on its nuclear deterrent to signal the West and project strength to its internal and external audiences, end quote. Putin has already put Russia's nuclear arsenal on a state of higher alert, and prior to the release of the DIA report, Russia threatened the U.S. by saying it had, quote, the might to put all of our brash enemies in their place, end quote. Putin also promised to cleanse Russia of the scum and traitors who disagree with him, claiming that, quote, a natural and necessary self-purification of society will only strengthen our country, end quote. In response, Biden called Putin a, quote, murderous dictator, a pure thug who is waging an immoral war against the people of Ukraine, end quote. Moving on, senior Biden administration health aides are concerned that COVID-19 cases could soon rise again as a more contagious Omicron subvariant has rapidly spread in Europe. While cases in the U.S. are at an 8-month low, roughly a dozen European nations are now seeing spikes in coronavirus infections caused by the subvariant, with Germany and Austria approaching or having exceeded record caseload levels. The White House COVID-19 Task Force and the CDC have met to game out how to respond if cases begin to rise drastically in the U.S. More than $15 billion in COVID-19 funding, meanwhile, has stalled in Congress, despite the White House warning that the U.S. will soon run out of funding for future COVID-19 booster shots, new treatments, and testing efforts. And the White House coronavirus coordinator also announced that he was leaving the administration next month. Jeff Zients will be replaced by Dr. Ashish Jha. Meanwhile, a federal appeals court lifted a ban that blocked the federal government from accounting for the social cost of carbon when issuing new regulations or approving infrastructure projects, among other endeavors. On his first day in office, Joe Biden issued an order that estimated each ton of carbon dioxide released into the atmosphere would cause $51 in societal damages. The Trump administration had reduced the figure to about $7 or less per ton. The court's decision reverses a February ruling by a district judge who sided with 10 states and Republican attorneys general that the carbon metric could cause them a real injury. And finally, Joe Manchin advised a conference of oil and gas executives that they should look for a, quote, return on investment, end quote, when making campaign donations. Manchin is the Senate's top recipient of coal, oil, and gas donations, and said fossil fuel executives should demand more from politicians who solicit donations, which he referred to as the mother's milk. Manchin added, quote, we haven't been good at, we haven't told our story. There's an old story in politics. Tell your story before someone tells one on you. It's hard to play defense. It's much easier to run an offensive play than make your adjustments, end quote. That's all for now. You can find the links and sources for all of these stories on the main website. And as always, visit whatthefjusthappenedtoday.com for the latest news and headlines. Until next time, I'm Joe Amditis.